Okay, so the store the state in an object extra credit here. So let's reveal the issue that this was talking about and see how we can solve that problem. So what happens if I set my status before I set my data? So I'll save this, I'll choose the Pikachu, and then kaboom, white screen of death. What in the world is going on? Let's pull up our console here. And oh my goodness, cannot read property image of null. What? And that's in the Pokemon data view. What in the world? And we could click on that. That'll take us right to that code here. And, yeah, image, source Pokemon, image. So we're passing it a Pokemon, and it's saying that the Pokemon.image cannot be read because it's null. Okay, so our Pokemon is null. But wait, didn't we just get the Pokemon? And then we set the status to resolved. And oh, okay, so that's what's going on. We set the status to resolved, and immediately React says, oh, okay, let me re-render this really quick. So before we get a chance to set the Pokemon, React has already started re-rendering, and we end up passing null to the Pokemon prop of our Pokemon data view. Now, if it would just wait for a second, then we would give it the Pokemon it needs and it would work just fine. And in a future version of React, when we enable concurrent mode and everything, then React actually will be able to do that. But currently, this is not possible. So we have to make sure we set things in the right order here. But I'd rather not have to do that. And so what we're going to do instead is we're going to put all of this state into a single object of state, which I'm going to call simply state. So we'll have state, set state, and we'll initialize this to an object that has properties for each of the elements of state we had before. So we'll say status is idle, and Pokemon is null, and error is null. And then we can get rid of all those. And then instead of just referencing state dot everywhere, I actually like to pluck off all of the elements of state right here, status and Pokemon and error. And honestly, what I like to do is I'll just stick that right there and destructure it in line. But people give me funny looks when I do that, so I'm not going to do that. We'll just destructure it right there. Okay, cool. So now all of this code is just fine. It's referencing the same elements of state. We just have to update our updater functions here. So instead of set status, we're going to say set state. And we'll say status is pending. Now we can get rid of that. And then right here, we can call set state with the Pokemon, and the status is resolved. Ta-da! That's nice. And then set state with the error, and the status is rejected. All right, sweet. So we'll save that. And everything works swimmingly. So one thing that I want to make a particular note here is that what we were doing before is we were only updating the status variable when we said set status to pending, but now we're actually updating the Pokemon and error as well. So this is a really important point. Whatever you pass to your state updater function is exactly the value that the state is going to be on the next render. So in our case, that means that our state is going to be this object. Let's take a look at what that implies here. We'll say state as a console log. I'll come over here, and here is, let's just do a refresh. We've got our status is idle, Pokemon is null, and error is null. There those are. And then if I go in here and say Pikachu, we get a re-render because the Pokemon name was changed, and then our use effect runs, and it sets the status to pending. Now you'll notice that we're missing something. We no longer have the Pokemon null and error null here because all we set this to was this single object with a status of pending. So we no longer have the Pokemon or error as part of our state. That works out fine for us because we're not accessing either of those properties when we're pending, which is a nice thing about having a status, but it's something to keep in mind. And then when our fetch Pokemon is successful, then we set the state to have a Pokemon and a status. And so now we have that Pokemon in our state right here, and we have our status set to resolved. And if we get an error state, then we're going to get a re-render for that Pokemon name change, and then a re-render for our status change to pending, and then we'll get a re-render for our status changing to rejected, and this error indicating there's no Pokemon with the name blah. But you'll notice that both on here and on here, we don't have the opposite state. So on the resolved status, we don't have an error state, and on the error state, we don't have the Pokemon state. So that's just something to keep in mind. So in review, what we did here is we took all three elements of state that we had before, and we put them into a single object, just like this. And then we destructured those properties off of the state. And then instead of setting those in individual setters, we set them in a single setter. And that helps us avoid issues where calling a state updater function in an asynchronous handler like this is going to trigger multiple re-renders, and we may not have set all of the state that we needed to when that happens. So I wouldn't recommend always putting your state into a single object like this, because that's not often a problem, but it's good to understand that this is a potential issue, and in the future you'll learn about useReducer, and that would be probably a better alternative to useState for this particular component. So you can look forward to that.